and we are live. How you doing, everybody? And welcome to RoundTable with the Streamteam. And this is where we talk to amazing content creators and their journeys on becoming what they are today. And tonight we are sitting at the round table with our friend Bob Dunn. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know that we kind of had a little ping pong of a schedule, and
No
yes, it is
worries.
100% my fault, and I apologize for that. But as people can hear, probably my voice is a little crackly and I'm a little under the weather. But I needed to make sure I got those meds in for PAX East. So yes, I wanted to make sure that we did an interview proper for Bob. So thanks again for letting us reschedule this week.
No worries. No worries.
And we have two other panelists here today, good friends of the stream team, as I should say. MJ is a boss.
What's poppin'? How you doing?
What is popping? How are things? You doing well in college? You all right this year? This week, I should
Yeah,
say.
it's kind of hard, but I'm making it.
Yeah, yeah. Just gotta make sure the sleep schedules are all good.
Um,
Make sure you're not drinking too much. Detox that liver.
mm,
That's what you got to do. A lot of Pedialyte. I'll tell you some. I'll tell you some. I got some tricks. All right, and we also have our lovely lady of the panel, El Boogie. How are you?
How are you?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm pretty good.
You killing more people in
Of
Apex?
course. I just killed a few people before I got on here.
I figured that's why you're running a little late.
Yeah, well, I like literally got there at 9, so.
Yeah. I was like, she's definitely playing Apex. She's definitely murdering some people.
Yeah. And I don't know what's going on with ranked, but for whatever reason, I'm having a tough time at rank, so I went back to regular so I could kill people. Feel
Yeah.
good about myself.
So some emotional happiness.
Basically.
Yeah. Are you running with the same two squad?
For the most part, I run with like Fozzie and Stitch. I don't know. We just been making it work, so.
I feel like that is the key to making any team play game like that work is
Yeah.
having two people, three people that are going to constantly play together because it makes all the difference.
I mean, if you're really trying to like move up in ranked, yeah.
Mm.
I'm totally down to like play with viewers if they want to play, but I'm not playing ranked.
I know a lot of people who end up having two accounts. One account is for people that they don't really
Mm.
care about, and then the
Mm-hmm.
other one is going to be the one that you actually care about your ranks with.
Yeah,
Because
that sounds a little sweaty, so I don't think I'm gonna do that.
oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Why do you do that?
I have been known to do that. I do that in some games. I have two accounts for Tarkov. One account I when I play is like my main account that I play with my main crew with, and then the other account is the one where I play with people that I know are gonna like shoot me in the back of the head when I'm not looking, so I don't have to worry about losing my good gear and stuff like that.
So randoms.
No, not randoms. I'm talking like my own teammates.
Oh, so you know them and they'll still shoot you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's good. It's fantastic.
right? Good
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, it's good. It's good. And all right. And as you guys know, it's me, Snaldo. I'm here, hanging out, doing the thing. Same stuff, different day. But so what we're all here for is to hear about Bob and what he's doing. And Bob, why don't you go ahead and tell us why you became a content creator?
Well, thanks. I kind of got into it sort of backwards. I've only really been involved in games coverage proper for about a year and a half now. Been gaming as long as I can remember, but I've been working for a few different newspapers over the years. And a couple of years ago, we were having a conversation, and I think Destiny 2 had just dropped. I had taken some time off that week to take a little gamecation,
Mm-hmm.
and some of us at work were talking, and I was telling them all about the game and what I was enjoying about it, and they could tell I was really digging it, and we got to thinking that maybe there might be a place in the arts section for some games coverage. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was a great idea, and pitched it, and it didn't really go anywhere. But let a couple of months go by, and just kept reminding them, hey, have you given this any thought, any consideration? And finally, I wrote them a sample column, and they liked it enough to give it some space, and been running it a couple of times a month, and that led to the opportunity to attend PAX East last year, covering it
Mm-hmm.
for work with the press credentials, which are it's just a real privilege to be able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's been going well. And recently, we've uh, uh, make some changes on the at the paper as far as the column goes. So we're pivoting to a more review centric um, sort of thing now, instead of more of opinion pieces and things like that. And we're concentrating now on smaller indie games. The triple A's.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we get around to covering them, they're old news. People have moved on,
Right.
and I mean, it's still a growing sort of column. It's sort of building its base, but Call of Duty doesn't need our help.
Right.
So
Right.
and I'm finding right now the smaller like indie stuff is just a lot more interesting. These devs are making way more like personal, like intimate things. They can afford to take more chances. They can do things that are just really weird and might only appeal to a smaller niche market. And I mean, I love my triple A's as much as anybody, but I think a lot of the interesting stuff going on right now is definitely on the in the smaller games. So we're pivoting to that sort of coverage, and we're starting to incorporate some video into that, which
Mm-hmm.
honestly we should have probably been doing all along. But so starting to learn how to do some editing and some small scale video production, and that's really fun and that's really satisfying. So it's been a great ride, and getting to and then that column led to getting in touch with Cognito, and the opportunity to start working with the website and everybody there, and led to the opportunity to go to PAX again this year. So it's been great. It's been really, really rewarding.
Yeah. So no, just because you told us a lot of information there, so I just want to there's a couple things that I was going through in my head when you were talking.
Sure.
So you said originally the the location that you worked for, they
Hmm.
ended up they they didn't have a video game section, but it's starting to evolve into that. Now, is that because like you have a passion for games, or is it because like that's just something that like you kind of like enjoyed and you thought, hey, this would be a good idea, or how did that kind of evolve in?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've literally been gaming over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's something that I've always enjoyed, talking about and thinking about, and not just talking about particular games
Mm-hmm.
themselves, but about like gaming as a community. And the newspaper I work for, the Berkshire Eagle, we're based in the middle of Berkshire County in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and there's a very big art community there,
Mm-hmm.
especially during the spring and summer. That's where Tanglewood is. That's where the Boston Symphony Orchestra takes their summers. There's the Williamstown Theater Festival. So the opportunity to sort of, well, if we're going to talk about games, then we should talk about them in order to make it work with what we're already doing. Talk about them as art, like you talk about, theater
Mm-hmm.
or movies or anything else. Um, so it sounded like a fun way to do something a little more creative than my regular news writing, but and talk about this hobby, and maybe just get a chance to expose people to aspects of gaming, or now that we're doing more talking about indies, expose them to games they might not have otherwise heard of or had an opportunity to hear about.
Now you're saying like all the indie developers and things that you talk to. Do
Hmm.
you feel that those indie developers are they're more passionate, you'd say, than those AAA developers, or is it just because you feel that they have something to prove, they have something that they want to show that's going to be helpful?
Yeah, I think I don't think that a developer working on Assassin's Creed or something like that is any less passionate about what they're doing than something like Inner Friend, which is made by a very small team.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think where the difference is, I think when you're dealing with a smaller game, and I'm just talking about smaller in size, but a smaller game, right? A smaller game, a smaller team, it can afford to take more risks in its storytelling or its presentation. Perfect example. There's a game I'm playing right now called Coffee Talk. It's mostly reading. It's, interacting with these conversations. It takes place in a coffee shop where elves and werewolves and spacemen hang out. It's weird in the best kind of way. And I can't imagine like a company like Activision or Ubisoft or something like that investing any assets or anything like that in there, because it's a game almost deliberately that's designed to not be for everyone.
Right.
So, and a company like Trove doesn't have to necessarily work. I mean, they would love to make all the money, but they don't necessarily have to worry about quarterly earning calls and, showing stockholders a certain amount of profit, where, the larger companies like Activision and EA, they absolutely do. So I think it's not less passion, but when you're making something for a mass market, you have to sort of broaden its appeal. And when you're dealing with a smaller game, you can really sort of narrow in on, it's just like, well, not everybody's going to get this, but the right people will find this game and they'll get it. And that's good enough.
Yeah, I got a question for you and for MJ and for L. So when you get, what do you guys think when you're thinking more of like indie type games, like these indie developers? Do you guys feel like they are able to put more passion into their games because they don't care about what people say, and they like kind of like want like their vision to kind of like be shown? Is that like, Bob? Why don't you talk first and then?
Yeah, well, I think it's I think it's just more of an opportunity to put more of yourself in a game, because again, when you're dealing with a smaller dev team, you're dealing with maybe as little as one person, and maybe a dev team of like 15 or 20 people, whereas again, just to pick an easy example, like Call of Duty, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who work on those games, so the sort of personality just sort of gets diluted, I think, through, because you're just dealing with a much larger sort of space to fill there. But I think when you have these smaller things just made by a couple of people, I think it's just an easier fit to, in whatever way you can, in whatever way works in the context of the game, sort of get more of, if not your personal feelings, your own personality or something like that in there. So I think it's just, when you're dealing on that smaller scale, I think it's just a more natural fit to do something like that.
Yeah. Elle, do you feel it the same way? Elle?
My bad. I thought I unmuted myself, but essentially, yeah, I feel the same way. That you're starting to see a lot more happening with the indies, which I think is why like some indie studios, or used to be indie studios, got gobbled up by Xbox, because they're pushing the envelope,
Mm-hmm. And you think that because indie studios are pushing the envelope, that's going to be good for large companies like Microsoft?
Well, like it'll be good in the beginning, that's how it always goes, right? Like it's good in the beginning, and then it becomes, we got to pay shareholders, so you have to make whatever sells. So
yeah, you think eventually that I hate to word it this way. You think that eventually that quote unquote selling out, even though it really isn't selling out to them. Do you think that's going to mold what they're like, what they are doing into kind of like, whatever they want, and to kind of diminish the integrity of those indie games?
I feel like there's this like whole cycle that happens in the industry where like people get bought up and then they get tired of making the same game, so then they leave that studio, go off and create another studio, start creating new cool stuff, and then all of a sudden you hear about that studio getting bought up, and it's like people just keep moving around type of thing. So I think until we figure out a way to stop that from happening, it's just going to be the way.
Right. Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Oh no, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I look at it like the indie film sort of movement, or the indie film era of the 90s. You had these people making really personal, really intimate movies, with very little budget and small crews and stuff like that. And once those movies started to get noticed by the big studios, they started to either incorporate some of those styles or actually bring some of those people in to the fold. And like, God, what's his name? James Mangold, the guy who directed Logan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he started out making indie films, these smaller, really intimate sort of movies, and then eventually started working for the big studios and made something like Logan. Yeah, it's a superhero movie, but it's closer to like an art film than a traditional big blockbuster superhero movie. So I'm hoping that once that shift starts to happen, that's the kind of positive influence you're going to see on these mass market games.
Yeah. So there's a book I read from, more like audiobook, because I barely have enough time to read a book, so I listen to my books. But Bruce Campbell. He was in the original Living Dead. I can't think of the producer, Sam Raimi. There we go.
Yep.
So Sam Raimi and him, they did their first big movie, and it was like dirt cheap, and like everyone thought like this is gonna be crap. This is not gonna do anything. Like it took almost 14 years for them to make their money in their movie from that original movie. So by the time that movie came out to the time that Sam and Bruce started doing all their other movies and everything, they still were promoting the other one. And then eventually, because of all of the other stuff that they were doing, people started realizing more about what's it called? Living Dead? Not Living Dead. Oh my God.
Evil Dead.
Evil Dead, yes. They eventually started having people learn about that. And a lot of the movie, the way that they did the cameras, for instance, like one of the camera ways that they did was that 45-degree tilt that they were doing left and right when they were running through the woods and stuff like that. That was something that was very unheard of. But by the time they started turning more mainstream, you can see more in that horror genre of people that were starting to use those things and other things, and it's pretty interesting. And I never thought of it that way, because like those indie developers are kind of pushing like the AAA titles and absorbing those people.
Right. Yeah. I mean that would be my hope, is that you're going to see that sort of gradual shift where games are willing to and able to take more chances and things like that, or tell these stories in a different kind of way. I don't necessarily expect smaller studios to advance things necessarily on the technical end, although that can certainly happen. But I think the more the more voices you have at that level, I think hopefully again that you would see that sort of like bubble up to the mass market studios, hopefully in really positive ways.
Yeah. MJ, you feel kind of similar that way?
Yeah, I feel similar about that. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely do. It'll be nice and exciting. Are you all right there, bud? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You good? So yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty interesting thought process. So what kind of intrigued you, Bob, to want to become a writer, and in like the way that you kind of like wanted to, like started becoming columnist and all
Mhm.
of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just this sort of impulse to um, tell stories. I remember when I was, in grade school and things like that. That's part of the school work that I always enjoyed. I was a big reader as a kid, and all of that. So I think I sort of gravitated toward that, and journalism always held some kind of an interest, but it wasn't anything that I necessarily steered toward. But and then geez, it was probably in my mid 20s when I'd always heard of him, but I never really read any of his stuff. Somebody turned me on to Hunter Thompson,
Mm-hmm.
and so I read, like, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I went back and read the early stuff that was a lot more sort of straightforward journalism, but still had sort of his unique voice, and it was sort of this wake up call that you could you know do, not that he necessarily always did or was always the best example, but that you could actually do reporting, and you could do news coverage and still allow yourself enough room to be creative. And he would put in these weird asides, and come up with these sort of fantastical scenarios to sort of explain the point of view he's coming from in a particular section. So I always found that really interesting. and then and then when I when I went back to college, I just realized that UMass Amherst had and still has this excellent daily student newspaper, and so I gave that a shot. And then the more I started to do that, the more I really enjoyed um, the all of the aspects of working in a daily newsroom, and in news reporting, and that's really sort of where all that started.
Interesting. So because you work for another, like, because you work for, like, a well-known newspaper, do
Hmm.
you, because you work for, Lords of Gaming.net also,
Hmm.
in that, thought process, how do you feel the camaraderie is and the communication is with Lords of Gaming in comparison to, like, a regular newspaper? Does it have that kind of same thought process? Does it has
Oh,
the
absolutely.
yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's it's sort of a similar workflow. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the Discord. Um, I have a Discord channel for the gaming clan I belong to. But the Lord's Gaming channel, especially the Writers Table section, is just active all the time, like
Mm-hmm.
more so than probably more than most of the channels I follow. And it's that same kind of daily communication. It's the same kind of, like, swapping in jokes and chop busting and like all the other things that go on in any kind of team based work environment. So it's very and the workflow is very similar. Like I said, you'll have assignments come down. People checking it with editors giving feedback,
Mm-hmm.
writers asking for more time because that's what writers do. All
Yeah.
of us do it. Um, so yeah, it's very, very similar. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about the opportunity uh, to get to work with the team, because again, it feels like a real lateral move. It's a very, very similar atmosphere.
Yeah. Was there any, like, types of things you didn't that that you didn't know, because you came on board, what, about maybe 6 months ago, maybe?
I don't know if it was that long ago, but probably, yeah, fall probably of last year we started
Yeah.
talking about doing some work together. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like what's the word I'm looking for? Do you think, like, the techniques and things that that Lords of Gaming is using
Mhm.
are similar to what a regular type of newspaper is using, in the ways of, like the back end stuff, and
Mhm.
yeah, and the
Well,
writing?
The well, the big difference is, and this was a learning curve for me, and it actually still is coming. Like I came up in a print environment, like a
Right.
strictly print environment. And, like the digital end was something you sort of had to do because it was, just inevitable. It's like something people expected. And now it's just like that's a priority in a lot of ways is the digital end of things. And then coming from that print discipline over to something that's completely digital was a real positive
Mm-hmm.
learning experience because I never had to worry about SEO. I didn't have to worry about whether the readability score or anything like
Yeah.
that, because I can guarantee a column I would write for print, if I just move that over to WordPress and had it look at it, there's no
Mm.
there's no way I'd get green lights on it because it's a
Yeah.
completely different um, writing style, just down from like paragraph lengths and things like that, and making
Mm-hmm.
everything fit and work within um, a whole different set of parameters. It's been that's been the big difference for me, and it's been really valuable because that was a blind spot for me up until this point because I just never had to worry about it before. So for me, that's the real big difference. Is just that it's a whole different way of sort of presenting information, but um, from everything else, from the structure and the way the stories are presented and all of that, it's very very similar,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see it has its roots um, in sort of that print tradition, that newspaper
Yeah.
and magazine tradition, which
So,
is a
I'm sorry. I was gonna say like, cause, I mean, I have my articles, and I know MJ writes his articles and stuff like
Mhm,
that, and like I know I'm not the best writer in the world,
mhm.
but every time I write an article and those SEO numbers
There
and
you
the
go.
readability numbers
Mhm.
are always off, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This is a pain in my. Are you kidding me? Like this
Yeah.
makes sense. I'm reading out loud. I'm like,
Yep.
this makes sense. What is going on?
Right.
And I mean, MJ, you do you agree when you're writing
Yeah,
your?
in the ass.
Yeah, it is. It is a real pain in the ass, and it's kind of like you got to be joking.
Right.
Do you feel that 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 movement for
Hmm.
online editing and articles and newspapers, do you feel that they are um, because they're, I hate to word it this way, but like kind of like a
Hmm.
newer wave of
Hmm.
things, do you think it's kind of helping mold the old way through, like, is it helping you write your columns differently because
That's
it's kind of helping you?
funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think in very specific ways. I just speaking for myself because for I've for as long as I've been writing, aside from technical stuff, I'm still a terrible speller,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a real great typist either. I
Right,
honestly
right, right.
don't know how I keep this job sometimes, but
So,
it's but no, I as long as I've been writing professionally, I've had like two consistent criticisms. One, my leads tend to be too long sometimes,
mm-hmm.
and two, I fall back into passive voice more than I should.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep it short because for the folks out there who aren't writers, they're like, "What the hell is he talking about? He's still talking." Um, is that the working with the WordPress and the system, it points out both of those things. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's been a good sort of check on myself to realize, because sometimes it's not always clear. I'll go through like the SEO. It's like, this paragraph is in passive voice. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'll read them
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's usually as simple as just moving, a couple of sentence fragments around and it's fixed. But to have that sort of instant feedback, it's like this paragraph is too long. Um, and this, you should really change the action in this sentence this way. um and then knowing that and having been reminded of that working on the digital end, it's been beneficial for me to be able to bring that those disciplines back to the print side, because again, those have been two from editor after editor. Those have been two consistent things over the years that I've had to keep an eye on, because those are bad habits that I can fall back into if I'm not careful.
Right. Well, at least you learn something
Oh,
out of
absolutely,
that. So
absolutely.
so you're saying before you're a gamer,
Hmm.
you play games, and you've
Yeah,
been
man.
playing for a really long time. Is there a particular game that you are in love with? That's like your favorite game of all time?
Oh man. Well, y- there's there's two. One from like the old era of gaming, and then
Give
one
it to us.
more modern game is the game I couldn't get enough of when I was a kid, man. Is the original Adventure for the Atari 2600.
Oh, that's the one where you had to type in and key exactly what you needed them to do.
No, no, no. Those were great. Like the text
Oh,
adventures, man. I
yeah.
loved those games, like the Infocon games and stuff like that. Like I
Hmm.
got a Commodore 64 with a disk drive just so I could play um Zork and Hitchhiker's Guide and all of those like text-based adventures. No, this was a cartridge for the original Atari called Adventure, and the basic, and there were different levels that got more complicated, but basically you would wander around this, by today's standards, really simple map. And there were three castles, and each castle had its own key, and there were dragons running around on the map. And then you had to get somewhere, and it would randomize. And somewhere on the map, this golden chalice would be hidden, and I had to find that, bring that back to the right castle. And actually, if you've seen or read the book Ready Player One,
That I was gonna ask if you.
that's the
I was gonna
game.
ask.
And
Yeah.
that's a true story. That Easter egg is real.
Yeah.
Atari used to publish a magazine like Nintendo did, and they walked you through how to find it if you had that game. But I would just, and your character was literally just a square on the screen.
Hmm.
That was your avatar, and you had a sword that looked like an arrow. It looked almost like an ASCII
Yeah.
game, and the dragons looked like ducks, and it's almost laughable by today's standards. But I would just play the hell out of that game just over and over again.
Side
Um,
question: Ready Player
yeah, man.
One. So you've read the book.
I did not read. I saw the movie. I didn't read the book. I
Oh,
know. I know. I know.
I figured that you've read. I read the book first. Well,
Hmm.
audiobook. I listened to the book.
Yeah.
So I listened to the book. I
Hmm.
started it. No joke. It was midday on a Thursday,
Hmm.
and it was I think it's like a 14, 15 hour book.
Yeah.
I was done by Friday while I was driving home from work.
Oh,
Like I
that's cool.
literally listened to it
I love it
nonstop.
when that
It was
happens.
so good. And then I watched the movie, and I was let down because the book is so much better.
Oh,
And
sure.
because you're a writer and you enjoy games,
Hmm.
I recommend you take the time and either read it or audiobook it, or if you want, I'll let you borrow my copy of Ready Player One or whatever. It is
Yeah.
it's so worth a listen.
I need
Yeah.
to read it still.
Yeah.
Do it. I'm telling you, you'll.
Yeah. That's, I've heard the same thing like plenty of times. And yeah, I was the movie was just kind of left me flat. I'm not going to get into it, but I had some issues with the movie in general.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I've heard nothing but good things about the
Hmm.
book.
Hmm. And
Um,
the other game you were talking about. I'm sorry.
no, that's all right, man. And then my I actually wrote a thing about it. To me, the perfect video game was the original Portal.
Hmm.
That game just for me just had it all. I'd never played anything quite like it. It was funny. It was smart. It's replayable. You can. It only takes a few hours. Um, there's enough challenge there. It's funny as hell. And every time you clear one of those rooms, you just feel like the smartest person on the planet for a couple of minutes. It's just like it's endlessly satisfying. And I just had a blast with it. And if people are sort of on the fence, or don't consider themselves gamers, or just think they're all one type of thing or something like that, I always try and steer them toward that. It's just like it forces you to think differently. And for me, that's a really fun part of gaming. Even even something like Grand Theft Auto, like those, to me, those are a series of puzzles. It's just like, here's your objective, here's where you start, here's the tools you have to finish it, figure it out. And part of the fun of those games is trying to see if you can come at the missions, or finding a solution to those problems from a different way. And Portal just delivered on that, every few minutes. It's just super satisfying playthrough. And you just realize, like, at the game's midpoint, that, all right, now you're on your own. It's just like, here's, the whole first half of the game is, okay, we're going to teach you everything you need to know. Now it's just like, now figure it out. And that's just,
Where did you get the audio?
Really clever use of gameplay.
What did you say, MJ?
Where did you get the audiobook from? Did you buy it, or did you watch it on YouTube? Because I know that sometimes people post audiobooks on YouTube.
Oh, you're talking about for Ready Player One?
Yeah.
No, I bought it. I bought it from Audible.
Do you do you actually read the book while listening to it, or do you just like listen to it while driving, like a podcast?
I end up listening to it while driving.
Yeah.
And I'll also listen to it while I'm working, because I need to have some type of background sound. So a lot of people play music.
Yeah.
I listen to audiobooks and podcasts. I have a rotation of about 8 or 9 podcasts, and I usually end up listening to almost one book every month. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's great. I wish I could do that, man, because, like, I've tried listening to audiobooks. I have a long commute too, and I just wind up, I don't know if it's road hypnosis or I just like chill out or whatever, but all of a sudden I'll just tune back in and it'll be like 2 chapters later.
Oh no!
Like, oh no, I don't know what how, and I'll be completely lost and have to go back. It's a nightmare.
I usually I have about an hour and a half drive into the office every morning.
Yep.
So it's an hour and a half in, hour and a half out.
Yep.
So usually what ends up happening is on my drive in the morning, I'll usually listen to a podcast, and then on my way out, I usually end up listening to the book. So, but I usually try to end up listening to the book while focusing on the road, only because I want to get home. I want to get home.
Yeah.
I want to get home, but I don't want to think about the drive. So that's just the way how I've always done it, and I've been doing it like that for at least 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah,
so,
gotcha.
But it's good. It's good. So going back to what you were saying about games. So what would you say that you kind of enjoy those puzzle type thinking games?
I mean, not exclusively, but yeah, no, I realized, actually I just played one. It's an older game, Gorogoa from Annapurna Studios. That's a illustrated based puzzle game. You manipulate these panels around to solve the puzzles, and it's all in the artwork, and it's just a blast. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, even if it's not necessarily a puzzle game per se, I think any game that sort of teaches you a different set of mechanics, something you can figure out as you go. Like Horizon Zero Dawn, I absolutely love that game, and that was one game, sort of an easy, not sort of, but an easier version of something like Demon Souls or Bloodborne or something like that, where you actually can track yourself getting better at the combat. And, like early on in the game, you'll avoid certain things because you just have no skill on how to tackle them. And then by the end of the game, you're actually seeking them out just for the sport of it. So anything that you can sort of feel yourself improve on, or anything that sort of makes you think or look at things in a different way in order to get through them, I find that, really interesting. But, at the same time, there's plenty of times where I'll just, log into Destiny 2 and just, run some strikes, just, to chill out and relax. And and shoot some stuff, which is rewarding in its own way. So yeah, it's a little all over the place, but yeah, if I've got to do some thinking sometimes with a game, I really enjoy that. But there's plenty of other times where I just like to just shut my brain off too, just blow some stuff up.
Exactly. As Elle said before, she likes to shoot some noobs.
Yep. I'm usually the one getting shot, but same.
So
I'm
yeah.
terrible at PvP.
Oh, so what you're saying is Elle. This is what I was saying. If you're gonna play with Bob, you'd want a second account, so your score wouldn't for ranks wouldn't be that bad.
Oh no, I will cost you points. Oh no, I will drag you down. No,
That's funny.
don't ever let me do that. No, bad things happen.
So, how when you started transitioning your writing, do you mostly write now towards the gaming genre of things,
Mm-hmm.
or do you kind of start? Are you writing still your normal columns also?
Oh no, the gaming stuff is very much I don't want to say extra, but it's not my main job. My main job is still court reporting. So most days
Can't you just keep that one on that plate?
in the courthouse and keeping an eye on criminal cases and motion hearings and things like that. The gaming stuff is apart from that, and it's twice a month. And like I said, it's a little more focused now that we're concentrating more on reviews and the video component. I sort of do on my own time a bit, but that's getting more streamlined the more we do that and stuff as well. But yeah, it's apart from the regular job, but it's sort of yeah, it's sort of an extra layer on top of it, but they're two separate things.
Gotcha. Does your family they like kind of understand like that you're doing this extra kind of gaming type writing stuff in addition to like all the other stuff, or are they kind of like okay with the understanding of what you're doing?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's a big part of the household here. It's it's part of the weekly routine. The PlayStation is we're one of those households where it's actually sort of the entertainment hub. So even if we're not gaming on it, we're doing our streaming through there or running Spotify through there or something like that. So just the machine in the house is one of those appliances, for lack of a better word, we use all the time. But no, my girlfriend's been super supportive of this throughout. She thought it was a great idea when they were going to give us the space to do a little bit of this, and she knows that this is a bit more than just a hobby for me. It's a big part of my life, and just thought it was really great that I get to combine these two things in a way that hopefully people can get a hold of and enjoy.
Would you say like it's more of like a passion project for you, like your game writing?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't. I don't necessarily look at it as. I mean, it's work, but it's not a burden or anything like that. It's something I genuinely enjoy doing, and it's nice to have that kind of outlet. So if I'm and it's given me these opportunities to to go to events like like PAX and to meet some of these developers and to get access to some of these these games and get to talk about them and things like that, because it's not I didn't always have that outlet, so this is sort of another way for me to enjoy the hobby. And I'm just fortunate enough that I'm have access to this platform that I get to talk about it with, in some kind of an audience.
Yeah, I got you. Elle, do you have any questions for Bob?
I thought of one earlier, and now I'm trying to remember. I should have wrote it down. Like I know that for me, I like totally can't write like that. Like I don't want to figure out what passive tense and all that. Like I don't like writing. I only ever did exactly what I needed to do to get a good grade.
Yep.
But yeah. So more power to you. But I still can't remember my question right now. So
I know I've been running my mouth.
No, that's good.
Do you want us to go to MJ while you're thinking of your question?
Oh, that's the wrong.
Yeah, go ahead.
MJ, you got any questions, my man?
What game is the most anticipating?
For this coming year, I gotta see what Cyberpunk's about. I'm really looking forward to that.
Are you getting into a specific console?
Well, I honestly, one of the disadvantages of writing for a living is there's no money in it.
Yeah.
So, So right now, we're a one console household. Anything I play is going to be on PlayStation 4 for the most part. Maybe some mobile stuff, but it's got to be available for me in some format there for me to be able to work with it at this point. But so it'll be. I'm going to check it out on PS4 when it comes out. But the studio is top notch. Looks like they put a lot of work into it. The delay's a drag, but most cases, a game's better if it cooks a little longer.
Yep. Just like that one Sonic movie. That's what people saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the perfect example, man. And it's just like, came out and was like, what the hell is this? They went back, fixed it, and it made all the money last weekend. So
I'm pulling a flag on the play here. MJ, you weren't old enough when the original Sonic came out there.
No, I'm talking about how they had to remake the character.
Yes, they remade the character because it didn't look like the original Sonic.
Yeah, I know, but he...
I'm just busting your jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Right on.
So you don't stream or anything? Or you just... right.
I haven't been. That's something I might get into. Like I said, we just started doing gameplay demos and video reviews for the paper now. So I kick myself because I was between jobs at the perfect time. The PS4 I think Destiny 1 was just launching and Twitch was still just getting its feet on the ground and all of that. And I had all the time in the world and just didn't stick to it or anything like that. But doing some kind of streaming is something that's always been interesting to me. So hoping to maybe get into that maybe sometime this spring, but we'll have to see. And but no, I think it'd be fun. But yeah, I kind of kick myself sometimes for not getting more into that in the early days.
I think, Elle, are you kind of like me? Like you were there at the time and you were playing something that you knew would have been like perfect to play, and like you totally missed the timing on it.
Yeah, like I wish I was ready sooner. Like with all my stuff, I think I waited like forever to finally bite the bullet and get everything and like try to make it happen because I knew before most people that Microsoft was going to be buying Beam. So like I was on Beam before it turned into Mixer.
Yeah, like because I had that thought of like because I was huge into Warcraft back when it just started, and I'm thinking to myself like if I was playing then streaming, like because I had the equipment, I had the capabilities to do it, like I could have been something now, but because of that, it's like it's a lot more difficult.
And I don't know, I don't know what may come later. I know that for the most part, I just do this for fun because I enjoy it, and I like having people to talk to while you're playing and stuff. So.
Yeah. And screaming, "Hey, look at that noob! I popped him in the head from like 20 miles away."
Basically.
Yeah. I watch you play Apex all the time. I do not have that ability to do that anymore.
I know I have to look so funny because I know sometimes I look over and I'm like, damn, my face is focused.
No, you have to be. That's just how it is. And that's how I was when I used to do Titanfall, because it's the same type of game. When Titanfall 2 was out, but, oh man. Oh. And do you have any more questions?
What? No, he already asked what game are you looking most forward to? What are you playing now? And do you play with your children?
No, I don't have kids of my own. We have a granddaughter, 3-year-old, so she's
okay.
Kind of like we try and keep the games off when she's around. But I'm playing. Actually, I got back into Borderlands 3, so I've been playing that a bit. I picked up like everyone else. I picked up Division 2 on the cheap last weekend. It was down to like $3. So I picked that up. So I started playing through that. I'm enjoying that. And then for review, I'm playing Coffee Talk, this little weird indie conversation.
Yeah, they're going to be a
cooking
PAX, right?
thing. Yeah, I I saw that. I'm going to. That's one of the things I'm hoping to drop in on, because it's a weird game, man, but I'm kind of fascinated by it. So I've been looking forward to talking to the folks behind it. I think it's I haven't played anything quite like it. It's one of those things that's definitely not for everybody, but I'm also thinking a lot about it when I'm not playing it. So
we'll talk after the podcast, because I think there's some information that we have to discuss, because I don't know if you're on the emails that I'm on. So
okay,
but yeah, that's awesome. Was there anything else, Miss L, MJ? Anything?
Nope.
No.
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna ask you your final question, and if Elle has any more questions, she can just yell at us.
Sure, man.
If you could live in one video game fantasy environment, what would it be? So, like, would you like to live on the Shire? Would you love to live on Coruscant? Would you love to, live in a video game world? Is there anything that you can think of?
Wow, that's a great question, man. God, what video game environment?
It doesn't have to be a video game. It could also be a fantasy world too.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. What am I trying to think of? I don't know, because most of the stuff I watch, all those worlds are kind of effed up in their own sort of special way, and I'm like, I don't know. Damn. I think, because nothing would be permanent. I think that I think probably the most interesting environment I can think of right off the top of my head to be in would be the city in Grand Theft Auto 3, that nameless city there, because that was like the first time I can remember, at least in the modern era, where the game was just all about just breaking the rules. There were no limit. If it gave you something to do and you could think of it, you could do it. And you'd be playing that game and you'd be like, oh, well, they're not going to let me do this. And they do. The game does. And there were all sorts of really interesting and weird ways, to break the game. It was, I think, probably the only Grand Theft Auto game that I played enough to actually, and it was a small enough map where I could actually sort of have the map memorized. I knew where to get to particular buildings and stuff like that. And again, that's one of those games that just sort of alters the way you think about playing games. It's just like it's kind of linear, but there's all these other ways to interact with it, and I think it really sort of expanded, at least for me, it sort of expanded my thinking of games. Just like it encouraged you to color outside of the lines. So I think that'd be a really interesting environment to hang out in for a while. And you get a rocket launcher. And what's wrong with that?
It's always positive to have a rocket launcher.
Right, exactly. Who doesn't want a rocket launcher?
Are you looking at me? Rocket launcher.
Rocket launcher.
Exactly.
Exactly. Just a solution to every problem. It's just like traffic jam, rocket launcher.
Rocket launcher. Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Somebody slow in the line in front of you, rocket launcher.
Exactly. Amazing. Amazing. Elle, you're good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, sounds good. So, Bob, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you? All the fun places where.
Yeah, man. Happy to do so. You can find most of my work at berkshireeagle.com. And my gaming writing appears on that website in the landscape section, the art section. And best way to find me online is on Twitter at BobDunn413. And you can also find some of my writing, on lordsofgaming.net as well.
There you go. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
It's great. Thank you very much.
All right.
MJ, where can we find you?
Hey, on Twitter at BeattyMJ. You can find me on Snapchat at, Beat101. And then Twitch, MJ is a boss. And then you can check out my articles on lordsofgaming.net.
Boom. There you go. That's what's popping.
Yeah.
Awesome. Elle, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at lboogie0208 and on Mixer at lboogie0208. And then on Saturday mornings on YouTube at Grow Woman Gaming, the podcast at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Awesome. Excellent. I was going to remind you.
I know. I'm starting to remember.
I actually have a sticky note on my monitor that says remind Elle about WGW.
Well, that's pretty sad.
Hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And me, it is me, Snaldo, SNALYDO. You can find me on Twitch Monday to Friday, other than when I'm here, from 7 to 10. I have articles on lordsofgaming.net. I have what is it called? I have a Twitter, which I'm pretty active on. I'm on Discord in the Lords of Gaming Discord, pretty active there. You can always contact me which way, you can do that. And I'd like to say thank you again to Bob for coming today. I greatly appreciate you for, taking the time out.
No problem.
And, if you have any questions for any guests or anybody, please email us at roundtablestreamteam@gmail.com. We're going to be putting up our article there on the Iron Lords podcast YouTube page for you guys very shortly. You'll get everything on Twitter and on iTunes, Spotify, and things like that come Wednesday. And remember, Lords of Gaming is on Wednesdays at 1. And check us out at lordsofgaming.net for all the gaming news that you could possibly think of. And we are on Table Stream. That's when I usually post information about who's going to be on the stream, what's going on, and all that fun stuff. So that is all over there. And remember, everybody, to dream big and keep gaming. And we will see you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.